Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Glor. We've learned tonight Israel is withdrawing most of its ground troops from Gaza as an operation that's lasted nearly a month winds down. Still, strikes continue from both sides, and the one that got the most attention today was an attack near a UN school. 10 Palestinians were killed. This afternoon, the U.S. State Department released a harsh statement saying, quote, "The United States is appalled by today's disgraceful shelling. The coordinates of the school have been repeatedly communicated to Israeli Defense Forces." We begin with Charlie D'Agata.
Once again, people who thought they were safe at a UN school paid with their lives. An Israeli airstrike targeting 3 wanted Hamas terrorists on a motorcycle struck near the school instead. More than 10 civilians were killed. Speaking to CBS News before the incident, Israeli military spokesman Peter Lerner defended strikes at Hamas.
We don't have a choice but to operate. We are genuinely sorry for every loss of life. But I'm sure you're not implying that we shouldn't defend our civilians because they're hiding behind theirs.
The recent escalation in violence began after the alleged abduction of Israeli soldier Hadar Goldin on Friday. Overnight, Israeli military officials declared he wasn't missing. Instead, he died in combat. More than 1,000 people came to Goldin's funeral today. 2 other Israeli soldiers died in that attack when Hamas militants emerged from a tunnel, a suicide bomber followed by a hail of gunfire. Israeli officials told us the destruction of that network of tunnels has been the top priority for Israeli forces, one mission that's almost complete. This tunnel alone is more than 2 miles long, stretching deep into Gaza. Where we are is more than 3/4 of a mile in Israeli territory, and they weren't even finished building it. As some Gaza residents ventured back into battle-scarred neighborhoods, we found a column of Israeli tanks and troops with their backs to Gaza. "We're going home," says this soldier. "Don't say we're going home," cautioned another. "They'll think it's finished." There's been no official Israeli government response to the harsh U.S. criticism regarding the attack near the UN school in Gaza today. But Jeff, military officials say they're looking into the consequences of that airstrike and say Hamas has repeatedly launched attacks from the vicinity of schools and hidden among the civilian population.
So in the northwest, those storms are producing lightning, but not much rain. In the southwest, a different story. We're joined now by meteorologist Eric Fisher of our Boston station WBZ. Eric, what is going on?
We're seeing a lot of heavy rainfall this weekend, Jeff. We have an area of low pressure that's spinning here in the southwest, unusually strong for this time of year. It's brought rain to places like Los Angeles and San Diego. They almost never see rainfall in the middle of summer. This is a spot that could absolutely use it. You talk about drought. This is one of the worst areas in the country. 100% of California in at least severe drought. Big chunks of Arizona and Nevada also included in that. The problem is too much rain at once. So with these thunderstorms, locally heavy rainfall, still numerous flash flood watches out. Be extra cautious, watching out for that running water over roads, mud and debris flows possible. It only takes 2 feet of water to take a car and take it right on down the street. On the other coast, East Coast, we're watching North Carolina and South Carolina. We've had a lot of weekend rain here, so we head into Monday, more locally heavy rainfall, especially the eastern halves of the state, and this could cause more flash flooding issues. We also are tracking Tropical Storm Bertha, but you notice right at the end here, off toward the east, there it is, Jeff, and it should be staying off the East Coast, not impacting that or Bermuda as we head into this week.
Eric Fisher, thank you very much. The World Health Organization says now that 826 people have died in the latest outbreak of the Ebola virus in West Africa. Among those infected, that American doctor who had gone there to help. He's back in the U.S. for treatment. As Vicente Arenas reports tonight, that could be good news for the fight against the disease.
A larger police presence can be seen in the area near the Emory University Hospital's isolation unit the day after Dr. Kent Brantley arrived. Brantley, who contracted the highly contagious Ebola virus while in Liberia, was helped off an ambulance by a paramedic yesterday. Both were wearing protective suits. The Centers for Disease Control Director, Dr. Tom Frieden, was on CBS's Face the Nation.
Well, it's encouraging that he seems to be improving. That's really important, and we're hoping he'll continue to improve.
Brantley's wife has now visited him and released a statement saying, "I am thankful to God for giving him the strength to walk into the hospital." Ebola, although difficult to transmit, can cause severe internal bleeding and can also cause weakness, vomiting, and muscle aches. It can only be passed from human to human through bodily fluids and can kill up to 90% of those infected. There is no cure or vaccine for the disease. However, the National Institutes of Health hopes to begin clinical trials of a vaccine in September. Dr. Anthony Fauci is in charge of allergies and infectious diseases.
And we could have vaccinated Dr. Brantley. It would have certainly dramatically decreased his risk of getting infected.
The vaccine would go to healthcare workers who have a high risk of contracting the disease. Today, leaders began arriving in the U.S. for an African summit with President Obama. The presidents of Liberia and Sierra Leone canceled their trips. Valerie Jarrett is a senior advisor to President Obama and says precautions are being taken.
We are working very closely, as I said, with the CDC. We're making sure that we're going to observe any necessary protocols for screening.
And we've learned that Brantley was able to receive an experimental serum before leaving Liberia. His wife said today that he was in good spirits. Meantime, the second aid worker infected with Ebola is scheduled to arrive here at Emory University Hospital within the next couple of days.
Victims of Greek austerity aren't going quietly. Many state sector employees, most of them female, have decided to fight for jobs they lost, even if it means facing down police. Marina Kosareva spoke with some of the austerity activists.
They've been called a symbol of resistance. So who are they? They are ordinary women, mostly aged between 45 and 60, who cleaned the tax offices, the Ministry of Finance and Customs Service up until September last year, when a ministerial decree saw hundreds of them suspended and later fired.
We went to bed with a job and woke up without one. Suddenly our lives were destroyed. We had two options: to cry over decisions that were made for us, or stand up and fight.
These women stage protests and occasionally block the entrance of the finance ministry, demanding the government stop ruining lives with their austerity measures. Recently, these demonstrations turned violent, with some of them ending up in hospital, accusing riot police of beating them up.
The police didn't want us there and they started pushing us around with their shields. They twisted my arm, they took my friend and shoved her in the police car.
Even Amnesty International accused local cops of abusing their powers and violating human rights. But little has been done to bring those responsible to justice.
This policy is part of the austerity measures agreed upon with our lenders. Our country can't have 670,000 public servants. This will help our private sector, which has been battered. So many businesses have shut down, and over 1 million private sector workers were made redundant. Sooner or later, hundreds of thousands will have to depart from the public sector, but that will create work for private business.
This is where the cleaners are camped out every single day, reminding the government that they're not going anywhere and informing the public of what they see as a great injustice. The Greek Supreme Court seemed to agree with them at one point, ordering the finance ministry to rehire them, only to have that ruling overturned. But it's not over yet, as these women now prepare to go back to court this September. Some experts claim that even if these women manage to get their jobs back, they will never enjoy the same salaries or benefits as they did before. But at this point, the only thing these women care about is reclaiming their rights, even if that means spending more months protesting.
Now to the west, where it's been an especially dangerous wildfire season. At least 25 large-scale fires are burning up and down the coast tonight. 12 of those, nearly half, are in California, where it's gotten so bad the governor has declared a state of emergency. Here's Carter Evans.
Wind-whipped flames along the Oregon-California border continue to rage out of control, burning at least 3 homes and threatening hundreds more. Nancy Reinman and her husband returned to find their rental cabins had burned to the ground.
The whole time we've lived here, that's always been a fear. And to have a reality is kind of a big shock.
In Northern California, at least a dozen new fires broke out this weekend, where dry lightning, temperatures over 100 degrees, and the severe drought have made the already bad fire conditions even worse. Lightning caused at least one new fire in central Washington, right in the shadow of the worst wildfire in Washington state history. The Carlton Complex fire has burned for nearly 3 weeks and destroyed more than 300 homes. It's now 82% contained.
Not again.
Joan Windsor had only moments to escape the latest fire in Washington's Okanogan County.
It was just a wall of smoke just being blown this way, and it was fast. It was incredibly fast.
Her home was spared, but hundreds more remain under evacuation.
Never thought that I'd want to see the first snow fly, but I sure do. It is so dry.
And there's little chance of any relief anytime soon.
Hundreds are dead this evening, more feared trapped after an earthquake today in China. A 6.1 magnitude quake centered in a county in the country's Yunnan province. Seth Doan reports rescue efforts are underway.
People began pouring into the streets Sunday afternoon after a 6.1 magnitude quake shook the town of Ludian in a remote area of southeastern China. Tonight, an estimated 12,000 homes have been reduced to piles of bricks. At least 367 people died and more than 1,800 are injured in the strongest quake to hit the province in 14 years. One resident told the state-run news agency the area looked like a battlefield after bombardment. A massive relief operation involving more than 2,500 troops is now underway, but making contact with the area is difficult. Communication and power lines are severed, and rescuers are still trying to reach victims in more remote towns. At least 180 people are missing. Aftershocks continue shaking the ground, and the road leading to Lungtoshan, which sits at the quake's epicenter, was recently damaged in a landslide. Strong rains are also hindering relief efforts, and thunderstorms are forecast for the next 3 days.
Medical marijuana is legal in New York State in some cases now. Today, for the first time, a marijuana ad was seen in the New York Times, even though it's still illegal according to the federal government. Anna Werner tonight reports on the complications and contradictions in marijuana laws.
In the first section of Sunday's New York Times, a full-page ad from a company called Leafly, offering to help New Yorkers select the right kind of marijuana for medical use. New York became the latest state to legalize medical marijuana in July. 23 states and the District of Columbia now allow some form of medicinal marijuana, and 18 have passed decriminalization laws, making the drug legal to possess in small amounts. In Colorado and Washington, marijuana can be bought for recreational use. Aaron Smith with the Cannabis Policy Center says it's time for the federal government to change its policies, too.
The immediate goal is to allow states to decide their own policies and move forward without interference.
Shops that sell marijuana in Colorado or Washington often have trouble getting federally insured banks to take the proceeds of their business.
Ideally, the federal government will create a system to tax and regulate marijuana just like it does with alcohol.
In April, Attorney General Eric Holder said the Justice Department will still enforce drug laws, but in a way that maximizes limited federal resources.
We will prevent marijuana from getting into the hands of minors. We will prevent violence in the trafficking, the sale of marijuana, prevent the cartels from profiting.
But Holder has not removed marijuana from the list of drugs considered dangerous by the government. That, he says, will be up to Congress. Anna Werner, CBS News, New York.
Turning to Taiwan now, where the death toll in underground gas explosions has risen to 28. That's according to the island's Emergency Operation Authority. The blast that hit Kaohsiung City at about midnight Thursday also left 287 people injured and 2 firefighters missing. The island's firefighting authority has promised non-stop search and rescue efforts. An initial investigation found that propane gas leaks at the scene were from the pipes of the LCY Chemical Corporation. The blast in Kaohsiung tore through a 3 square kilometer area, overturning cars and ripping up roads.
For the second straight day, 400,000 people in and near Toledo, Ohio are being told not to drink the tap water. 3 different labs are testing for toxins. Adriana Diaz says people are looking for safe water anywhere they can find it.
The National Guard joined the statewide effort to get water to a city in need, delivering bottled water, water purification systems, and ready-to-eat meals to residents of Toledo and the surrounding areas. Anheuser-Busch is bottling water instead of beer as part of an emergency contingency plan. Ohio Governor John Kasich says the water emergency will stay in place until he's comfortable with his own family drinking it.
Everybody just stay cool, stay calm, and we'll get through this. We'll learn from this.
Water coming from Lake Erie into this Toledo treatment plant has shown elevated levels of microcystin, a toxin. Authorities say the culprit is this huge algae bloom fed by farm and sewage plant runoff. Dr. David Grossman is the Toledo-Lucas County Health Commissioner.
Our job is to make sure we monitor the threat, to make sure it doesn't occur, and if it does, God forbid, we shut down again and we start over and get it good. We want to make sure that the drinking water to this community is safe.
Water shelves are cleared out for nearly 60 miles, with stores in Ann Arbor, Michigan posting all out of water signs. Long lines for water snaked through supermarkets and formed in school parking lots Saturday after the city issued the urgent water notice.
You can't wash dishes, you can't wash up, you can't cook, it's hell.
Residents in Toledo, most of its suburbs, and some areas of southeastern Michigan were also advised not to bathe children, not to give the water to pets, and not to boil the water because the toxin is not affected by heat, and when the water boils away, it's more concentrated. So far, there have been no reported cases of anyone becoming sick.
Our Clarissa Ward has just made it into Gaza today. She joins us now. Clarissa, what are you hearing about this strike on the school?
Good evening, Jeff. Well, we spoke to the head of operations for the UN here, who told us that the UN had shared the coordinates for that school with the Israeli military 33 times, the latest time being just an hour before that strike. According to eyewitnesses, the missile hit just outside the front gate of the school, where people had been lining up to collect food supplies. And of course, this comes just days after another strike on a UN school in which at least 15 people were killed.
And Clarissa, the IDF concluded it was not to blame for that last school strike. Is there a sense this time there might be consequences?
Well, the Israeli military is blaming this on militants who were operating in the vicinity of the school. So it's unlikely that we'll see any internal consequences, but certainly this strike contributes to a growing sense of global outrage. You heard that statement from the State Department. That really the harshest condemnation of Israel from the U.S. that we've seen so far.
Clarissa Ward in Gaza tonight. Thank you.
Now, Israel keeps pounding the besieged Gaza Strip for the 28th consecutive day. Over 400 Palestinian children have been killed so far. In Rafah, a child was killed and 4 others were wounded as the southern town came under yet another Israeli bombardment. At least 12 more people were also slain in Jabalia during Tel Aviv strikes. Also, another Gazan lost his life in an attack on a medical center in Gaza City. The Palestinian Health Ministry says at least 1,815 people have been killed during Tel Aviv's 4-week-long bloodshed. Other sources put the death toll at 1,856. The attacks have also left 9,400 Palestinians injured. Israel says it will hold its fire in most of the Gaza Strip for a 7-hour window on Monday. However, Hamas has rejected the temporary truce as an attempt to divert attention. According to a statement by the Israeli army, the ceasefire will take place between 7 a.m. and 14 p.m. GMT in the Palestinian enclave, except for the east of the southern Rafah city. That's where clashes are still going on. Now, Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zohri says the move is unilateral and aimed at diverting attention from Israel's, quote, genocide in Gaza. This isn't the first time Israel has declared a ceasefire on Friday. A planned 72-hour truce was broken by Israel within the first hour. The failed truce was brokered by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and the United Nations. Let's speak to our correspondent, Halla Safadi, who's standing by live in the Gaza Strip. Now, Halla, tell us a bit more about this announcement of a unilateral truce on the part of the Israelis. If the past is any judge, this means either there will be a massive escalation of attacks before this truce sets in, or a massive escalation as soon as this truce sets in.
Well, as long as Israel always announces a ceasefire only from one side, unilateral ceasefire, then this means that this would never actually take place tomorrow. They stated that Israel announced it from 10 a.m. local time to 5 p.m. Local time as well for 7 hours. So basically, this ceasefire does not include Rafah, where the past few days hold a massacre in this area. And they stated also that if they were attacked during this ceasefire, they would attack back. So I just cannot understand how it's a ceasefire from one side, and then you threaten the people if they attack, that Israel would attack back. A ceasefire to work, it means that it needs to be agreed on from both sides, not from one side. And Israel should not be the only side that decided the time and the duration of this ceasefire. As long as they keep doing this, this shows that they're only good at saying they want a ceasefire, but not really having one on the ground. And this was proved looking at the past ceasefire that was under or was brokered by UN and the USA as well, and was broken after 2 hours, less than 2 hours, when it was announced. So yes, we do expect that the next, or the few hours or few even minutes right before the ceasefire would take place, as Israel claims, would carry a lot of bloodshed in Gaza. This is something we're used to by now. This is always happening in Gaza whenever we're talking about a humanitarian ceasefire. So basically, it seems that a humanitarian ceasefire means killing a humanity right before the ceasefire, or killing a humanity after it, and just giving time for people to look for bodies of those who were killed during those hours of a humanitarian ceasefire.
And very, very quickly, if you can, Hala, I do understand that Hamas, of course, has rejected this announcement of a unilateral truce, saying this is a tactic to divert attention from the genocide that's taking place in Gaza.
Yeah, this is true, and they did not agree on a ceasefire. Well, they were not even contacted officially in order to work on a ceasefire from both sides. So it's Israel who made the decision, and it's Israel who stated and announced that there is a ceasefire. So basically, again, yes, whenever it's a ceasefire, they're actually trying to polish the way they look in front of the international community, as if they're full of humanity to give a humanitarian ceasefire, just to make people, or to move the attention from the genocide that's going on the ground to another update or breaking news on the news that Israel is finally giving a humanitarian ceasefire to Gazans. So, but when we actually think about it, what kind of a ceasefire is it if the tanks are still in Gaza? What kind of ceasefire is it if the drones are still flying over Gaza? And then what kind of ceasefire is it if the place that needs a humanitarian ceasefire the most, which is Rafah right now, is actually out of the ceasefire? So if a ceasefire is to take place, it's not really just according to the Israeli conditions. It should take into consideration also the situation in Gaza and those who are fighting back in Gaza. So I don't really think that this would take place. If it takes place, it would only last for a couple of minutes or a maximum an hour, and this already happened before because Hamas did not agree on it, and now they have all the right to shoot back or to even shoot back if Israel continues its aggression. So I don't understand if they want to actually start a ceasefire at 10 and then kill people like they always do 5 minutes before the ceasefire starts, and then expect people here or fighters here not to shoot back. So if they kill people at 9:55, which happens all the time, and then after 5 minutes is ceasefire, no one's supposed to fight back. So I don't really think it's going to happen.
Okay, we'll wait and see how this unfolds. Our correspondent Hala Safadi standing by in Gaza with the very latest. Hala, thank you very much indeed.